Hello, everyone. I'm Mary Davis. I come from a Christian-Palestinian background, and today I'm joining in a discussion with Jola of who comes from a European-Jewish background. And today we're going to discuss anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, and how anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism because it was started by the Jewish people. The anti-Zionist movement was started by the Jewish people. And we are going to discuss this by bringing up topics about pre-state of Israel, the history of the Zionist movement, what's happening in Israel today. And then also at the end, you're going to understand why voices like ours are not heard in the media, why we are silenced in the media. And also the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism that they are pushing, trying to conflate all Jews as Israelis in a sense, because what they are saying is that if you criticize the Israeli government or the Israeli state, then that is anti-Semitism, and how that is problematic when it comes to dialogue on the issue of Palestine. So thank you, Jola, for joining me today.
My pleasure.
So I know you said that there's an anniversary of an assassination of a pretty popular rabbi. So we can go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, today we are meeting in a very important day because 96 years ago, Jacob Dehan was assassinated by the Israeli militia. Just a second, because I think it's good to actually. There we go. That's the poor Jacob. You're not going to hear that in the news actually, because Zionists are very, silent about their crimes anyway. Mm-hmm. So we thought we're going to start by actually pointing this out, that we are meeting in this day when the Jewish rabbi was assassinated by the Israeli militia because he opposed the Balfour Declaration. Because not many of you know that actually a lot of Jewish people opposed the Balfour Declaration. It wasn't like it was welcomed by all the Jewish community. Kind of contrary, it was rejected by majority of the Jewish community. And Jacob, which you can see over here, he raised his voice and he said, I oppose the Balfour Declaration because if we're gonna emigrate to Palestine, we want to immigrate as equals. And that was seen as a very much problematic at this time. So the Zionist militia decided that it's gonna be better for them to assassinate him, and he was just killed, just to silence him. So yeah, the Zionist militia not only killed the Palestinians, as we know, but they also killed the Jewish people. So it's worth to point it out.
Wow. So I guess, you mentioned the Balfour Declaration, so I guess I can share that and we can read it so people can understand what it was said as far as, so let me pull that up. So as you can see here, here's the letter to Lord Rothschild by Arthur Balfour, and it was dated November 2nd of 1917. So this was 22 years before World War II and the Holocaust. So we need to make sure we know that, because there's this big gap between the signing of the Balfour Declaration and World War II.
Yeah, Balfour Declaration was 1917, and years later, Palestine was given, to the Jewish people as official. After, as you mentioned, there's a big gap in between it.
Exactly. And I know Rabbi Wise, he's very popular here in America. I think he lives in New York. Popular anti-Zionist rabbi. I want to say that he said that, it wasn't always Palestine. It wasn't set on Palestine. They thought of Uganda.
I've got all of this prepared, so we're going to touch this too. Okay. Because
so I'll go ahead and I'm going to read the Balfour Declaration so people understand what it said. Dear Lord Rothschild, have much pleasure in conveying to you on behalf of His Majesty's government the following declaration of sympathy with the Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet. His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object. It being clearly understood, this is where we need to pay attention, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or rights and political status, the status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. And I should be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. And so that's what you're saying, the rabbi did not agree with this.
Yeah, so
that's assassinated.
That's the official document which everyone can check. And as you said, this document is the biggest proof that it wasn't the land without the people, that was people living there.
I was just going to say that that's a popular Zionist motto, was a land without a people for a people without a land. But as you can see, it even mentions the people who exist in Palestine, and it even calls the land Palestine, which Zionists try to deny today, that there was no Palestine, Palestine didn't exist. And it even says the non-Jewish communities in Palestine. So there were already people living there. I mean, this makes it very clear. And this is in 1917. Like we said, 22-year gap between 1917 and World War II.
I would like to bring something because you remind me that we are in another very important anniversary, not many people know. And that was before the Balfour Declaration. So if you can give me a share screen,
oh, yes.
I can show people some video, which for many will be shocking.
Yeah, let me see this. Okay, let me stop my share. Here we go.
Thank you. We're sharing screen, we're sharing everything. There we go. We had received one Palestine complete. In 1915, he proposed the establishment of the Jewish state in Palestine. So that was before Balfour Declaration, 2 years before. So as we can see, it was actually an idea from 1915, which was before even the Balfour Declaration.
And it's notable, you know, it's something that we should mention is that also this signing was done during World War I. Mm-hmm. The signing of the Balfour Declaration happened during World War I.
Yeah, yeah. And as you mentioned, there was a lot of other proposition, because people might think like, oh, Palestine, so Holy Land, and that was the only one idea, but it was not that simple. Let me just go through it very quickly. 80-20. Manuel Noah tried to found the Jewish homeland at the Grand Island in the Niagara River in America, to be called Ararat, as the Ararat mountain.
Oh, wow.
So that was 80-20, and it was called the project Ararat City.
And that was in 1820?
Yes.
And it was a plan to make a Jewish homeland in America?
Yes.
Wow, I never heard of that. I'm sure many Americans have never heard of that. Wow, very interesting.
In 1903, Brits offered Uganda as the homeland for the Jewish people.
I've heard that one.
Yeah, this offer was made to the Herzl to get 5,000 square miles of the Mount Palau, which is modern Kenya at this moment. So that was number 2. Number 3, 1928. USSR, which is the Russian Federation Committee, proposed creating Jewish homeland in Birobisk in Russia. So that was another idea. Then we've got 1979. That was Fungu Plan, which talked about establishing a Jewish homeland in Japan. Then we've got the Madagascar. The Nazis wanted to relocate all the Jews to Madagascar, and Himmler, which was the big Nazi, even said, I hope that the Jews will emigrate to Africa or some other colony. That's why they initially favored the Zionist movement, because they want to get rid of all the Jews.
I was just going to say that those in Europe who supported this ideology of Zionism, they supported it because they were anti-Semitic. They were anti-Semites.
Yeah, that's why majority of Jews actually oppose it, because they've been thinking like, you know, wait a second, the Germans just came, they want to get rid of us, and you know, clear our countries, you know, from all the Jews, and now the Zionists coming and they want to get rid of us too, you know, like what the hell is going on?
This might be a good point to share that song that you were talking about. Do you want me to pull it up, or do you have it?
Yeah, please do, please do.
Okay. There it is. So I'm going to fast forward to the English, because most people here will understand the English version. Do you want to explain what this is?
Let them hear the Yiddish, because that's very interesting. Not many people know what Yiddish is.
Okay. So this was the language that your family spoke.
Yes.
Not Hebrew, because Hebrew we were talking about that, how Hebrew was a dead language, since we believe the scholars say around 200 CE, and that the recreation of Hebrew as a spoken language actually reemerged around the same time as political Zionism in the late 1800s. So that's something interesting to mention as well. Did you want to explain what this song is first before we play it?
The song is made by the Bund, which was the socialist labor movement, and it was in 3 countries, which is Lithuania, Poland, and Russia, and it exists between 1897 till the 1820s. So, and even before, even a little bit longer, but you know, 1920s, let's just say.
Okay.
So they've been basically the socialists, and they believe that they don't want to immigrate anywhere. They don't want to go to Palestine. They've just been happy in their homeland, and they focus on building their communities and their better life for their diaspora in their own countries. So let's just get to the song, because this is kind of...
We'll listen to it in Yiddish, and then it will play in English for everybody who's paying attention.
Euer narische Zionisten, mit eier narischen Zeichel, ihr mögt doch gehen zu dem Arbeiter und lernen bei ihm ein Zeichel. Ihr mögt doch gehen zu dem Arbeiter und lernen bei ihm ein Zeichel. Wir wollt uns führen kann Jerusalem, wir sollen dort Gold gehen, wir wollen besser sein in Russland, wir wollen sich befreien, wir wollen besser sein in Russland, wir wollen sich befreien.
Here comes the English.
Oh, you foolish little Zionists, with your utopian mentality, you'd better go down to the factory and learn the workers' reality. You'd better go down to the factory and learn the workers' reality. You want to take us to Jerusalem so we can die as a nation. We'd rather stay in the diaspora and fight for our liberation. We'd rather stay in the diaspora and work for our liberation.
All right, so I'm gonna stop the share here, and we're gonna come back. All right, so as you could hear, I mean, it sounds to me like they're saying that the Zionists didn't understand the working class and what they were going through.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
sounds to me like they were very proud to be Polish, to be where they were from, and they had
Oh, yes.
want to go to Jerusalem. And it's interesting how they say, you want us to go to Jerusalem so we can die as a nation.
Yeah, it's very interesting words actually. And it makes you think, like, because all this evangelical Christians, which support the Jewish people, and not many people know that they actually support Jewish people, because there's like deeper agenda there.
Mm-hmm.
They want all Jewish people to come to Palestine, so they believe when that happens, the prophecy will be fulfilled.
Yes.
And then the Messiah come, and what will happen next is open too, because if you don't accept the Messiah, then you have to die, basically. So they want all the Jews to come to the Palestine to die, basically.
And that's why they really
So,
support the Israeli state today. And they turn, and actually I feel like they turn the other cheek almost to the suffering of the Palestinian people for that reason.
yeah, and why Jewish people is not gonna accept the Messiah? No offense, because you're a Christian, but the Jewish people believe, like the Muslim people, that there is just one God, and the God don't have sons, you know. So Jewish people don't see Jesus as a son of God. So
Exactly.
that's why Jewish people are doomed, because they're not gonna accept Messiah. So according to Zionist Christians, they have to die. But I think there is other interpretation, maybe, so we can die as a nation. Like, for example, they've been very connected with Poland, with Russia, with Lithuania. So maybe they've been thinking, if they go to Palestine, all the nation, like the Polish Jewish nation diaspora, we just gonna die, because who's gonna live there?
Interesting.
Yeah, I've got some quotes from the Bundists, so it will actually show people like more what the anti-Zionist was. If we can skip to this one.
Yeah, go ahead.
What is very interesting is that the Bund organization, that was the section of the Bund in Israel, which was liquidated a few years ago. But what is interesting, the Bund is reborning in America and in Poland.
Oh, wow.
So it's gained big popularity, you know, people still remembering, the songs got the new life, people still reading the books. So it's pretty much very interesting topic for the young Jews, for the young generations. So that's one of the books which I've got, 20 Years with the Jewish Labor Bund.
And they were anti-Zionist Jews.
Yeah, there was Anti-Zionist Jews. That's the Polish book, which describes like all the struggles they had at this specific moment in Poland. It's worth to mention that that was the biggest Jewish party. That was majority of Jews who were Bundist. So it's not like it was like, you know, small group. It was massive. Majority of Jews was in Bund at this moment.
Wow.
So that's the Bundist, like basically is explain what was the main aim of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Just a second. The Bundists did not wait for the Messiah, nor did they plan to live for Palestine. They believed that the Poland was their country, and they fought for a just socialist Poland, in which each nationality would have its own cultural autonomy and in which minorities' rights would be guaranteed. So they pretty much did not want to live at all. And the Zionist movement saw the Bund organization as very much problematic. So they make sure that the Bund was not reborn, you know, after war. So they make sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
a lot of Bundists been killed. Those who survive never actually joined the Zionist movement. Some of them did, because, you know, you can convince people by using many tools.
Like we said, fear. You can use fear.
Yeah, you
That's
can.
what I think the Zionists, they really play on that fear.
You can use blackmail. But for example, Haji Meyer never immigrated to Palestine, and he just remained Bundist. till the last his days. And that's actually one of his quotes, talking about anti-Zionist quotes.
And he was a Holocaust survivor, correct?
Yes, he was Holocaust survivor. Yeah, but that didn't stop Zionists of smearing him as an anti-Semite, mind you.
Yeah. They even do it to Holocaust survivors.
Yeah, yeah. To be a Jew means always being with the oppressed and never the oppressor. That's the Malek Edelman, which was a surviving leader of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. I don't know if I've got a quote of Haji Meyer, but I've got a quote of Irena Klepfish. She was Polish as well, anti-Zionist. Jews must learn to say without excuse, without equivocation, despite our history and our powerlessness in the past, despite all the injustice that we have endured today. Now, the Palestinians are the victims of the oppression, and their oppressors are the Israelis. So she was not afraid of actually point this
Criticizing Israel and pointing them out.
But many Jews criticize Israel, and they go even so far as comparing them to Nazis. Many Holocaust survivors do as well. You can check this out; it's open for everyone, but you're never gonna hear it because this kind of information never comes up, and it begs the question: after surviving the Holocaust, like the most horrible atrocities, you migrating to Israel, and then something click in your mind, oh, that reminds me of a Nazi Germany. Isn't that strange? Maybe instead of shutting down these voices, we should be asking questions. Why? Why did you think that? Why the press is not interested?
Exactly. Why is it okay to smear people as anti-Semitic when in fact, you know, people who are Semitic are asking these questions?
Just to mention, Bundists were, at this time in Poland, the Polish Jews, and not only Polish Jews, they've been boycotting German goods because, you know, Nazism in Germany. So the Jews decided, well, we have to put the pressure. So the boycott is actually Jewish things. Yeah, we used to boycott German goods, and no one thought is anti-Germans. Everyone understood is anti-fascist, you know, anti-Nazi.
And what was the reasoning for the boycotts? Do you know?
Because they've been killing Jews, and they've been destroying the Jewish properties as well. You know, Crystal Night, which is the night of the broken glass. It was just nightmare. But at the same time, when the majority of Jews were boycotting German goods, the Zionists make a pact with the Nazis to bring all the gold and all the possession of the German Zionists to Palestine. So that was widely criticized.
You're talking about the Havara Agreement, which was an actual agreement between the Nazis and the Zionists, a transfer of goods. Yeah, that was like 1933, I believe. So that was before World War II, which started in 1939?
Yeah.
And so I think we should start talking about your family story, because you have an interesting story during World War II and what happened to your family, the displacement of your family from Poland, because they didn't want to leave Poland and they were a really wealthy family.
Wealthy. As you could be in Poland at this time, but we had a big garden. We've got like over 28 big trees. And I remember growing up in our village, we still had this trees and, you know, this garden. I was playing hide and seek there. But they also have a lot of land, which they unfortunately lost. And they have a shop, which they unfortunately lost too. And it wasn't like my history of my family is somehow special. You know, Poland was under occupation for 123 years. A lot of people suffer. And that was every single family who was affected of what happened then. So it was not just, you know, my family. And I have to make it very clear, because when we talk about the Holocaust, we're talking about the Jewish people only, and we forgot about the rest. We're forgetting about the Slavs who's been butchered and, you know, been slaughtered, who go to the gas chambers. We forgot about homosexuals. We forgot all about the disabled people who weren't Jewish, about the gypsies. You know, we forgot about all these minorities. If we go and see any Holocaust memorial, these people are not even mentioned. So that's why I feel it's like my duty to mention that although my family suffer, other people suffer too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So my family didn't go to the camps, but there was the camp in the city next to which we live, because we live in Chciana, which is a small village next to the Ukraine border.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest city next to the Chciana was Rzeszów, and they actually make a Jewish ghetto in Rzeszów, which I've got a lot of pictures of. And it was very dangerous time. But my family actually were deported to Siberia, to the gulags, as the forced labor. And when they get out, they've been deported out of the country, and they spent like years and years of trying to go back to Poland. I don't know if I can share the pictures.
Yeah, go ahead and share the pictures.
My history of my family is actually mentioned in the book, because my grandmother's sister, she wrote the book, which is called Droga do Polski, od syberyjskiej tajgi po afrykański bush. It means the way back to Poland, from the Siberian taiga to the African like forest. So that's the chapter from this book. Babcia Stawarzowa siedziała w pierzynach i wciąż bezgłodnie modliła się. Pytaliśmy, dlaczego babciu tak się wciąż modlisz? Odpowiedziała, za was dzieci, żebyście wrócili do Polski, a dla ciebie proszę o lekką śmierć. It means that grandmother Stawarz, she was sitting in the duvets and she just prayed. And why, grandmother, do you praying so much? We asked her. Mm-hmm. For you children, so you could return to Poland. And for myself, I'm asking for the very not painful death. So she knew that she's not gonna come back, and that's Baptista Wojtyła. I don't know her, you know, that was many generations before. So I know those people only from the family albums, but you know, it's my duty to remember, because, you know, so that's her over here.
Oh, nice.
That's my grandma. Just a second. I will show you, because everyone says I look like her. Everyone... wait. Plus design is going to claim, oh, it's not her picture. Oh, that's my grandma here. You see?
Yeah, I see her.
There we go. So from Siberia, they've been shipped to India.
Mm-hmm.
And from India, they've been shipped to Iran.
Wow.
To Pahlavi. I think you're going to, if you see the picture, that was like proper refugees with absolutely nothing. They lived in the camps, like poor refugees, Palestinian refugees in Nakba used to live. And they spent like years and years trying to go back. Many people died on the way. As you can see, you know, children playing next to.
Yeah, it does look like the Palestinian camps in Gaza.
Yeah. So that's the Polish refugees. I'm the granddaughter of the refugees they didn't manage to slaughter in World War II. So I do support refugees always and always will be. Mm-hmm. Because that's the values. That was my family. You see, refugees with absolutely nothing. nothing,
Wow.
not
That
even
looks
shoes.
like Nakba. Absolutely looks like Nakba.
Many of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they tried to go back. They didn't settle in Palestine, but they passed through Palestine on the way back, which was very difficult because at this time, it was before 48, so that was before the establishment
Of Israel.
of, yeah. But they docked there in the port of Haifa, and they've been told that no ship are coming to take the refugees, further. And they've been offered to stay in Palestine, but they refuse. They refuse. Yeah, so they've been lied, like the ship is not coming, and then the passport, something is wrong with the passport, you cannot travel, and they spend like weeks and weeks on port of Haifa trying to just get out. Yeah. We can share actual links to this because that's the Zionists' dark secrets. They don't like to share the fact that the people actually didn't want to stay in Palestine, Jewish people. They want to desperately go back home. So it would be nice if we share it as the link and resources so people can actually read about it. Because
they needed the numbers to create the Jewish state.
Yeah, because they needed numbers. Yeah, one from my family, she joined the General Anders army. That was the army in Palestine, not only in Palestine, but in Palestine as well. And a lot of Polish people joined the army because they've been hoping that the General Anders will come and help Poland to liberate Poland. So they joined the army hoping they're gonna fight for their country. Okay. But she never stayed in Palestine. She met the British soldier. She fell in love and she moved to London. That's her picture. And she was working fixing the planes. So when the plane come back, British plane come back, so she was fixing the planes.
Wow.
That's why it's pissed me off a little bit if some uneducated people are telling me, oh, you don't belong in Britain, my family members fix your planes. Hey, you didn't know what I mean.
I think now would be a good time to bring up Muhammad Hadid.
Yeah.
And his family. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Maybe Nakba first.
Yeah, the Nakba. Do you have some information that you want to share on that?
I've got information about the white papers, which people don't know. And it's kind of interesting, and I would like to share this too, because before Nakba, there was important document which was signed in, which is the white papers, which, well, I'm not going to spoiler alert. I've got like 1 minute video, which I can share about this. Just a second. No one talks about the white papers too, people the Zionists don't like us to talk about legal documents. So that's the picture of the white papers, and it says, just a second, it is essential to ensure that the immigrants should not be a burden upon the people of Palestine as a whole, and that they should not deprive any section of the present population of their employment.
It's kind of mocking the same thing that the Balfour Declaration said.
Yes, so basically, be mindful about the people who are living there.
And when were these white papers established?
White papers, 1930s something.
1930s?
Yeah. That was before the Nakba, so that has to be 1930.
Yeah. Because I have that video from Gaza, but I also want to share Muhammad Hadid's story. Because like you said, some people were forced to stay in the state of Israel that didn't want to be there. Jews that didn't want to be there wanted to return to Poland or wherever they were from were not allowed to leave. At the same time, Palestinians were being forced out of their homes. Yeah. So here, I'm going to share a screen and we will find this story.
1939, the white papers.
Okay. So that was the start of World War II. Here he is. So Muhammad Hadid, here I have a little bit about him. He's a Jordanian-American real estate developer of Palestinian origin. His, the father of Bella and Gigi Hadid, the supermodels, And his family lost their home in 1948 to Jewish refugee family they took in. But it's interesting in his story, he's not bitter about it. Of course, he comes from a family with money, so I think maybe his situation was different. But this is a story of many Palestinians, and that's why I felt it is important to share. Here on Instagram, I screenshot his picture. A lot of Zionists try to say that Palestinians don't have leadership. They didn't have a real country, real leadership. If you don't have a Western government, then, you know, they act like your government didn't exist and that your people don't exist. But here he was saying that his great-grandfather on his mother's side was the king of the Galilee and the prince of Nazareth. So I thought that was really interesting that he shared that. And then I wanted to share this conversation here because it's very important. Like I said, there's Jewish people. Here's somebody who is Jewish having a conversation with Mohammed Hadid on Instagram, and I screenshot it. He says, my Jewish family lived in Palestine, now Israel, before 1948. So that was before the establishment of Israel as a creation, as a state. I was told they came from Tiberias and Safed in the north of Palestine. It is therefore highly likely that they lived under his rule, talking about his great-grandfather. And I'm sure he was kind to them. The Palestinian Arabs have always been kind to the Jews who fled persecution and came to Palestine, my own family included. I hope and pray we will live in peace and coexistence one day, even if it means having one state for all. I don't like the current situation. And this is the narrative and the perspective that we don't hear. You know, they act as if Palestinians were always anti-Jewish, and that's not the case. Palestinians are anti-Zionist, is the case, right?
Well, don't blame them. Their country is under occupation. We Polish people have been anti-Nazi
Exactly.
for so long. So,
and then I want to read this because this was actually like a news source who did an interview with Mohammed Hadid, and this is his story. He says that that's how we became refugees to Syria. We lost our home in Safed to a Jewish family that we sheltered when they were refugees from Poland on a ship that was sailing from country to country, and no one would take them. So nobody in Europe would take these refugees. And he said, they were our guests for 2 years till they made us refugees and they kicked us out of our own home. That's my history. And then he said, strange thing that I and my family would do it again. So he still has a very high spirits. He feels that the Jewish people needed a place to live. He saw the Jewish people as people who were suffering and they needed a home. And, you know, with his situation, he became a millionaire and he has supermodel daughters, but that's not the situation for all Palestinians. Many ended up in refugee camps, which is why I want to show this video of Gaza. This was more around 1950, but it's important to show that the people of Gaza are refugees and they were taken away from their homes and placed in these camps. So they were not armed, violent people, because this is the, I think, interpretation because of the media today, that the people of Gaza were invaders or they don't belong there. So I want to share that.
Across the border which don't exist, by the way, because Israel never declared the borders.
And that's
it's
a reason
artificial, you know, separation fence in so-called buffer zone, which is illegal, by the way. So there's no border.
Let's try this again.
750,000 Palestine Arab refugees are living in makeshift tents in the Sinai Desert in Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. The camps are badly overcrowded, and the shelters afford little or no protection against the elements. United Nations relief workers are rushing food, clothing, and other supplies to these stricken people. Registration cards are carefully checked. With food in scarce quantities, duplication must be avoided. Egyptian army authorities administer this particular territory south of former Palestine, known as the Gaza Strip. Each refugee gets the same amount of flour, beans, and rice. There is no meat. United Nations supplies mean the difference between life and death. Children and aged refugees are the worst sufferers. United Nations milk is their mainstay. The hope is through the distribution of milk powder to halt the death rate of a few months ago, which averaged 120 deaths each night.
120 deaths each night.
Yeah.
And these are the people of Gaza today. They're refugees. Did you want to add anything about them being refugees or how their homes were taken away? I know you know a little bit about that narrative.
Yeah, a lot of homes being destroyed. And Nakba, by the way, I want to make something clear here. We mentioned that the Gazan people are refugees. And I want you to understand that the refugees are very problematic for the Zionists because it comes with the right of return, which is guaranteed by international law, and Zionists are freaking out because their main goal is to have majority of the Jews in their Jewish state. So the right of return is very much for them. So they would like to people of Gaza to actually cease to exist, basically, and being taken by other countries behind the backs. They're talking with other countries, or give them some rights, take those refugees. You know, the refugees was always problem. I know you've got the statistics
I do.
about.
I was going to say I could pull them up real quick.
So the people understand from where all these refugees came from, because they
Yes.
didn't came from
Yeah,
nowhere.
so this is, I want to make this clear here, because this is the Jewish Virtual Library Project ACE. So when you go to About, I just want people to understand that these are biased statistics. This is the American Israeli Cooperative Enterprise. It was established in 1993. That would have been around the time of the Oslo Accords, the signing of the Oslo Accords. So it was a U.S.-Israeli relationship. So this is, you know, an American-Israeli alliance site. So the statistics, according to my grandfather, when he looked at these statistics, he said, this is not right. But the reason I'm going to show them is because it does show that the non-Jewish population before 1948 was higher. And then all of a sudden there's this big swap in the population, which would have been the Nakba that many deny existed. And also along the side, if you pay attention, you see the increase of Jewish percentage numbers, but then today it's decreasing. So that was something I noticed in this. So we're going to go here. And actually, I want you to see that 1517, it's saying 5,000 and 295,000. You see the non-Jewish population is higher. There's only one time in here where there's like a dip. It's 1914 and 1918 where you see some Jews may have left. Yeah. But then it's just an increase. So this whole idea that we've been fighting for thousands and thousands of years over the land is kind of a lie. It's a lie, you know. Palestine was a place where refugees came, you know, so, and you see that. You see the Jewish numbers increasing here. But then when you come to 1946, I want you to pay attention here. I don't know why they don't have a statistic for 1939. I find that very unusual.
Yeah, because that was the white paper, and I think that was a lot of illegal immigration, so they cannot include that in the statistics. That's my assumption.
Yeah, well, that was the Palestinian or the non-Jewish statistic here, though, that they're missing. Very strange. I'm not sure if you can see the numbers because I think our photos are over here, but you'll see like 30% in 1946. Yeah, that's the Jewish percentage. So it was 30% were Jewish. Everybody else was non-Jewish. And you see, we were over 1 million non-Jews in Palestine. And then here in 1947, and then look at 1948.
Yeah.
Look at 1950. Now, these statistics aren't right. I think they have these numbers for the non-Jews very low. That's what it seems like to me. But you see the swap in numbers. You have 1 million here and then 156,000. So that's where the Nakba happened. And then I want you to pay attention here, what they're saying the statistics are here in 2020. Over 6 million, close to 7 million Jews, and only 2 million non-Jews in Israel. And they're saying that the Jews are 74%, but you also see it's decreasing. 80%, 77%, 75%, 74%.
It's massive reverse migration from the Israel, so it's definitely decreasing, and Zionists are not comfortable to talk about it because they want to see people to see Israel as the amazing place to be.
Exactly.
And it's a lot of propaganda, but there's you know, a lot of Jews.
I'm trying to find the document I have. I have a document from Haaretz that gave the statistics of
plus only, you know, even if you look at it, you understand that there's 2 million people in Gaza. So obviously the statistics are a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know which 2 million they're counting. Are they counting just the people who are considered Israeli citizens of, you know, the Arab citizens of Israel, you know, of Israel? Maybe that's the number, the 2 million that they're getting, but they're not counting everyone, because here is Haaretz, and this was published in 2012. So this is years ago, and this is an Israeli source. And they said the estimated number of Palestinians in the world at the end of 2012 was 11.6 million, of whom 4.4 million are in the West Bank. Gaza Strip, East Jerusalem. So there you go. They're saying 4.4 million are in West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem combined, and 1.4 million live within Israel, and that this was a problem because they're saying Palestinians are going to outnumber the Jewish population.
Yeah.
So,
That's why the fascist son of Netanyahu is calling for ethnic cleansing.
yet I want to bring that up because Yair Netanyahu, I believe it's in Tel Aviv, they were talking about building a homeless shelter over a Muslim cemetery.
Yeah.
And this was a conflict, and Jews, Muslims, Christians, people who are against this, demolishing a graveyard. Imagine if this was a Jewish graveyard, this would be a big deal. So they did a protest, and Yair Netanyahu said, get rid of the minorities out of Tel Aviv because they're a problem.
Yeah.
And so this is coming from the son of the Prime Minister of Israel, which sounds very fascist. He makes a lot of statements that sound very racist. I also wanted to touch up on something else real quick. We can always...
Yeah, but no wonder. It seems like a mentality because a lot of politicians are openly fascist.
Exactly.
In Israel, and I'm not afraid even of using this word because it is calling for ethnic cleansing is fascism, dehumanizing other people. This is fascism.
I want to bring up something else because I think it's very important. I want people to see that this is the mentality, and I almost feel like it's a brainwashing that's happened to a lot of people in the state of Israel. And you can pull this up. I can't pull it up right now. I have it on my phone, so I'm going to read this to you. So there was a popular rabbi in Israel, and this was reported by the Times of Israel. So this is their own sources. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, he was buried in the largest funeral in Israel history. And 800,000 attended his funeral. And that's not counting all who watched it televised or all that maybe supported his ideology. And then the Times of Israel also put out a story about him on his most controversial quotations. And I would like to read to you the quotations of this rabbi. It says here, the guilt of the Jewish victims of the Holocaust. Here was his quote on this. The 6 million Holocaust victims were reincarnations of the souls of sinners, people who transgressed and did all sorts of things which should not be done. They had been reincarnated in order to atone.
Wow.
So he's basically saying that they deserve their deaths. They deserve their murders.
Yeah.
Isn't that horrible? That sounds anti-Semitic, doesn't it? And so this is the point I'm trying to make, is that many times the anti-Semitism comes from the rabbis and the leaders of Israel themselves, and they get away with it. So here's some other quotes. Hurricane Katrina as divine punishment. That was a hurricane that happened here in America, in Louisiana. It affected a lot of African Americans because the population there was a large number of African Americans affected and impacted by that. And so he's talking about the African American community down there. He says there's a punishment of godless American support for disengagement from Gaza. So here was his quote. There was a tsunami and there are terrible natural disasters because there isn't enough Torah study. Black people reside there. He's talking about New Orleans. Blacks study the Torah? ? He said, let's bring a tsunami and drown them.
Wow.
Hundreds of thousands remained homeless. Tens and thousands have been killed, all because they have no God. Again, speaking about Black people in America. They have no God, he said.
Wow.
Then he says Bush was behind Gush Katif, the Gaza settlement block. He encouraged Sharon to expel Gush Katif, and we had 15,000 people expelled here, and there are 150,000. It was God's retribution. God does not shortchange anyone.
Wow.
Now here's his quotes about Gentiles. Goyim were born only to serve us. Without that, they have no place in the world, only to serve the people of Israel. In Israel, death has no dominion over them. With Gentiles, it will be like any person. They need to die, but God will give them longevity. Why? Imagine that one's donkey would die. They'd lose their money. Wow. This is his servants. That's why he gets a long life. He works well for the Jew. Why are Gentiles needed? They will work, they will plow, and they will reap. They will sit like an effendi and eat. That's why Gentiles were created. On his remarks of Arabs, he says, how can you make peace with a snake? And on Muslims, he says they're stupid. Their religion is ugly as they are.
Yeah.
This is the rabbi.
Yeah.
Had
So
the largest funeral in Israeli history.
if any Zionist watching this and want to quote this as anti-Semite, please make sure that you put the source and who
I'm
said
going
it.
to put the Times of Israel sources in there because I want people to see that this is clearly racism.
Yeah, it
But
is.
they're the same ones who will throw out anti-Semitism when we bring out the truth about what they are promoting in their state.
Yeah.
And so I felt that was very important to share. Let me see. Oh, we also did not cover. I wanted to show you, let me see if I can pull it up. Herzl, and I wanted to talk about Ben Gurion just slightly for a second.
Herzl was anti-Semite as well.
You want to talk about him? Because I'm going to pull him up real quick. You can go ahead and talk about him.
No, pull it on, pull it on.
Let me see. Oh, I think he's here. No, that's the Yemeni. Okay, here's Theodor Herzl. Probably can't see his face really, but that's him. He was not religious Jew, was he?
No, I don't think so.
He wasn't religious, and he's known as the creator of Zionism, or he gets credit for the creator of political Zionism.
Yeah, father of the Zionists.
Yeah, 1896, I believe. And so, yeah, he was not religious. And that was the point I want to make too, is that this was not a religious movement. This was a non-religious movement. And here's the other proof here. Ben Gurion, oops, I guess I exit out of my screen. Let me share. It's on the border here, so I can't see. Okay, so right here. Okay, so I pulled this up. This is Ben Gurion, which I want to point out that his real name is David Ben Gurion. He was the first prime minister of Israel, and his real name, his surname that he was born with, was David Gron, which is German. He's German Jewish. And I wanted to point out that it says that he was not religious in this bio. And not only was he not religious, he hated the religion of Judaism, according to people close to him. So let me Control F. I think it's hated was the word I was looking for. Yeah, here it is. Ben Gurion himself described himself as a irreligious person who developed atheism in his youth. He demonstrated no great sympathy for the elements of traditional Judaism, though he quoted the Bible in his writings.
Wow.
And then some people who worked close to him, a philosopher who worked close to him, said that he considered him that he had hated Judaism more than any other man he had met.
Wow. And how many streets of his names are in Israel at this moment?
Exactly. So he's a non-religious Jew. So that's the point, and is another point, is that this was not a religious movement.
No, no. If you check the Orthodox Jewish groups like Neutrali Karta in Facebook, you've got the Jews against, rabbis against the Zionists, and you've got Jews against Israel. So they are all like the groups by the Orthodox Jews who's been saying for many, many years that actually Zionists are not religious, and they are absolutely in contrary of everything what the religions teach. So
Ronnie Bar-Khan, he is a popular Israeli Jew who is against the occupation, and I guess he made this documentary. It says, it discusses how Zionism went to great lengths in order to strip Jews of their Jewish religion. So we can probably put this video back where
he's on political trial just now in Germany.
He is
on political trial in Germany with other Jews who's been boycotting Israeli officials. So the lobby sued them, and they are on the political trial just now.
So he's on political trial
as we speak.
Ronnie Bar-Khan. And so he's an Israeli Jew, and he put this together.
Germany, as many of Israelis, it makes you think like grandchildren of the Holocaust survivors going back to Germany because Israel is so unbearable to live.
Yeah, you showed me those sources. There's a lot of sources of reverse migration. Yeah. But this one, I guess, is speaking to an Arab Jew, I believe, and he's talking about how they stripped them of their religious beliefs. And so I like when they came to the country. So I wanted to play this real quick. It has the translation in here so you guys can hear it.
אני הנרטיב שלי במדינת ישראל, אני שומע עוד כילד, ואבא שלי מספר לי שהם כעולים, עולים מתוניס, אתה יודע, באו להם לבית הכנסת, נערים, אמרו, מי רוצה לבוא לארץ ישראל? תראה, הילדים קפצו, כאילו מחלקים סוכריות קרמבו. אני. עושים להם מדורה, ואומרים להם, אנחנו הולכים להקים בארץ ישראל חברה חדשה, נאורה, מתקדמת, מפותחת, ולכן, המבחן הראשון שלכם היום הוא, ילדים, לזרוק לאש את התפילין ואת הציצית. מכאן מתחיל הוויכוח השורשי של מדינת ישראל. כשאבות הציונות הם כבר באו מראש עם תוכנית לאנטי יהדות ואנטי אמונה ואנטי תפילות ואנטי מסורת. הם חשבו לעשות מבני אדם כאילו מכונות. עכשיו יש כאלה שהלכו, הנשמות שלהם נמסרו לרעיון הזה. וזה הרבה מאוד מזרחיים, לא כמו דני, אבל הרבה מאוד מזרחיים שלא רוצים לדבר על העניין המזרחי. ועכשיו נכנס לי פה גם האלמנט של השנאת הערבית, כמו שהציבור הזה הוא מאוד דומה לנו, הוא מדבר בשפה שלנו, והתרבות שלו היא התרבות שלנו. זה מה שהחדירו בנו הציונים, שנאה, לשנוא, קודם כל. יש מי שדומה לנו, והכמו שלא יוצא האמת, יש לי ביניהם ממש מטלות בנקמנות שלהם. זה שהם לא הכי תמיד אוהבים אותם, פרשים, אבל חיו מאוד בשנים, מאז גירוש ספרד, ואפילו עם העליית הנאצים, הערבים הסתירו את זה.
So you heard him even said, they sheltered us. They sheltered the Jews before all of this happened, since the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah, so there is not the religion war, and we want the people to actually put there in their mind, there's nothing to do with religion. Nothing to do.
And
everything
said
to do with
nationalistic. They wanted us to be machines. They wanted us to be nationalistic. They wanted to get rid of the religion. And this is what we're talking about.
But look how they succeeded. Look at Israeli society. When they bomb Gaza, they go on the hill, bring the popcorn, and they watch people being killed.
Yes.
500 children died, and then be sitting there watching it and eating popcorn and cheering up every time the bomb drop. You know, those snipers, they're killing people in the head, in the heart, in the back, Nazi style. This is how they kill the Jews in the ghetto. So you see, this is what's happening when you remove the religion. As he said, you've got absolutely no point which tells you where to stop, because everything is permissible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they've normalized the violence.
They normalized the violence, normalized the killing, the humanization of others. They really did.
Oh, and the other thing to mention too is the Yemeni children. I think we should mention that here. The Yemeni children affair, it refers to the disappearance of between 1,500 to 5,000 babies and toddlers of new immigrants of the newly founded state of Israel. It's believed that some of them were given away to Ashkenazi Jewish families. Some may have been killed. They don't know exactly what happened. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but they also tested them for black blood, like African bloodline.
Yeah.
So this sounds like something the Nazis would do even.
You know, this obsession with blood is very much strange, you know, obsession with blood. That's very much not right. And if that doesn't make you like, ooh, let me question that, let me research that to know what it is. Because to enter to Israel, you need to have a DNA test, which we're gonna touch.
Let me take this off.
Because it's very interesting. Because
you have that up, our DNA test.
Yeah, they want to make sure that you are Jewish, so you have to prove that your Jewishness. You know, I'm not tribalist. I think all this blood kind of thing is just big BS, because we are all mixed. We are all,
thank you. Mm-hmm.
You know, we are all citizens of the world. So this special blood. Imagine if somebody make a test for Muslim blood or Christian blood.
And say that all Christian blood or Muslim blood. Yeah, we have to come back here.
You cannot enter Vatican unless you do the test for
Christian. And nobody would be slow to say that that's racist. Everybody would say that is a racist agenda. We would all say that's racist.
Yeah.
And that's what I said is the Zionists, they hide behind the suffering of the Jewish people in order to get away with the atrocities that they commit.
Yeah.
That's what they have done. And yes, we did take a DNA test and we shared that on Facebook. I mean, we don't have to share it on here. You can go ahead and just discuss it. We could talk about it.
No, I want to share it because I want the people to actually see, because they might think, oh, that never happened, but I'm not ashamed. It's in public album in my Facebook. Anyone can check
so
it.
if you want to pull it up, go ahead and pull it up.
Yeah. Because if you're playing this card, like, you know, Jewish blood, then let's play it full, please. Let's be my guest. There we go.
I agree. I mean, I don't like using DNA to prove that anyone belongs anywhere, anything like that.
No,
but what they're using.
Not right.
Yeah, it's what they're using. And so we're trying to show that the narrative does not make any sense. What they're trying to do does not make any sense.
Exactly. Let me share the screen. As you can see, ethnicity estimate, Eastern Europe and Russia. So I'm pretty much European, 86%, which is the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland, and Lithuania. And you can see the color, which is like yellowish. Then you've got Baltic states, which is 3%, and European Jewish, which is 11%, which is marked with kind of bluish.
So I wonder what it is that they're testing in your DNA to say this is Jewish. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is it that they're testing in the marker to say this is Jewish?
No idea. That's the good question to ask the bloody ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, well, it comes up as a Jewish. You are either Jew or not. You know, it's not like the percentage must be that high or that low to qualify. You know, you are or you're not. Last time I checked, being Jew is somebody who was actually believing in Judaism and practicing Judaism. So that last time I checked, you know, the converts can be Jewish too.
So they're trying to make it a race. They're trying to make it a race.
But hey, let's play. But, you know, this DNA test, it shows that with this, plus with my documented family history, I will be able to get one-way ticket to apartheid and live there.
Yeah, you'd be able to live in Israel.
Yeah, that's pretty much enough.
You would actually be able to move on Palestinian land, on occupied Palestinian land, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Palestinians living in refugee camps cannot do that. So that's something that we need to bring up too. And I wanna talk about that because it's interesting that we say that, because even in South Africa, the white Africans were not allowed, the white South Africans were not allowed to live in the occupied territories.
Yeah.
And who was it? I have this from Jerusalem Post. It was Mandela's grandson. He visited Israel and Palestine.
Mandela, yes.
Yes, his grandson visited, and he said that it was worse. It was worse than the apartheid in South Africa. So I want to read the quote of what he said about his experience there. He said, "The settlements I saw here in the West Bank reminded me of what we had suffered in South Africa, because we also were surrounded by many settlements and were not allowed to move from one place to another freely." He continued, "What we have experienced in South Africa is a fraction of what the Palestinians are experiencing." He said, we were oppressed. He says, we were oppressed, talking about South Africans, in order to serve the white minority. The Palestinians are being eliminated off of their land and brought out of their territories. And this is a total human rights violations. I think it is a total disgrace that the world is able to sit back while such atrocities are being carried out by apartheid Israel. This was Nelson Mandela's grandson who said that.
It's worth to mention that a majority of South Africa Jews, they are pro-Palestinian, and you can check them out on the Facebook, South Africa Jews for Palestine. I recommend.
Wow.
They're amazing.
Thanks for sharing that. And you said something was interesting about your DNA, that it came back and it told you that.
You see this Gaza Strip, Palestine, my promised land? Do you see like any DNA showing up there? No. But to be even more clear, there is the new thing from exactly the same ancestry.com, which black and white told me that there is no connection to my ancient homeland. You know, how did that? I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah, I see it. You might be able to maximize. It says Middle East, Syria, Lebanese, no connection.
Yes. I don't know, can anyone see this?
And someone might, like my DNA showed that I did have connection.
Ah, there we go.
And there are some people who are Palestinian and their complete DNA results only come back to the Levant, come back to the Middle East. So you're telling me they don't belong on the land because they're not Jewish?
Yeah.
That's the ideology. That's what they're saying. If that's not racist, I don't know what is not. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what is, if that's not a racist agenda.
Yeah. So I want people to see, and if you are like Jewish Ashkenazi, you're watching this, please do make your own DNA test and just, you know, educate yourself, because they lied to you big time. Or woman, you have to wake up, because what's going on is absolutely ridiculous. It really is.
It's not okay.
Not okay.
It's really not. I don't know if you want to talk about maybe Jackie Walker and the politicians who are being smeared as anti-Semites, since we're on that subject.
Yeah, because as we see, there is the big campaign, well orchestrated campaign by the Zionist lobby, and don't be afraid to call them lobby, because as we're gonna say, you know, later, as we're gonna prove, there is a lobby. So there's no point tiptoeing around it and trying to pick the words. There is the big Zionist lobby who is silencing people and smearing people as an anti-Semite, even Jewish people, those Holocaust survivors who criticize Israel, they are smeared as anti-Semites. Bernie Sanders was smeared as an anti-Semite. Majority of the Jews from the Labour Party in UK been smeared as anti-Semites. It's just criticizing Israel is just seen as an anti-Semite. Now, a few days ago, we saw the example, one girl from the Labour Party was expelled for sharing the interview, which suggested that your police train in Israel. So that was apparently anti-Semitic somehow, but we all know is a fact, well-documented fact, by the way. So it's just getting absolutely ridiculous. Those people who don't know what's happening, what's going on, I suggest you pay attention, because it's not just Palestinian activists being smeared as anti-Semites, it's Jewish people too, who oppose the Zionism and who support the Palestinian human rights. And they're smeared as anti-Semites by people who share, you know, anti-Semitic cartoons. I was smeared as an anti-Semite myself by a person who was blocked from YouTube for sharing multiple speeches of Adolf Hitler, and he's a Zionist, but he's never gonna be questioned about it, because apparently that was for educational reasons. Like the Netanyahu son is never going to be questioned about the cartoons as Semitic he's posting, you know?
Yep. So this is Jackie Walker, and she's being questioned by somebody who's obviously a pro-Israel lobbyist, calling her, basically referring to her as a racist, like saying, how are you not a racist? Because you don't accept the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which in the beginning, like I said, they're trying to conflate basically any kind of criticism of Israel as anti-Semitic, as anti-Semitism. So here's Jackie Walker, who is both Black and Jewish. She's a double minority, by the way, being smeared. And she was actually kicked out of the Labour Party for allegations of anti-Semitism. See if I can.
The government has accepted the new definition of anti-Semitism, the IHRA definition. The National Union of Students accepts it. The Labour Party accepts it. Jeremy Corbyn accepts it. You don't. The definition says that to bracket Jews and Nazis is anti-Semitic. The definition says that to call Israel a racist state is anti-Semitic. Why do you insist on not accepting that definition? At the Labour Party conference, you said you can't find a definition you can work with. That is a definition you can work with. How can you call yourself, Jackie Walker, an anti-racist when you do not accept the most commonly accepted definition of anti-Semitism? And while we're on the subject of the Al Jazeera program, it was pure Viagra for anti-Semites. It was a disgrace. 4 complaints have gone into Ofcom. Let's see what happens. That's the question. How can you call yourself an anti-racist when you don't accept the definition of anti-Semitism?
I do not accept your premise that Israel is not a racist state. As a non-Jew, you cannot buy land anywhere you like. You cannot use any roads. If I'm in a hospital and I'm a Jew, I can choose whether I share that area with non-Jews or not. If you look at any definition of racism or apartheid, you might be very well informed on that. I have definitions, I have very good definitions that I can work with. And just because you can give me a big long list of all the people who agree with it, I think this is something that Chomsky is absolutely telling us and saying it clearly. It doesn't matter how much harassment, how much vilification, how much abuse you send to me. I will never accept that Israel is a necessary part of my identity as a Jew. And do you see the way, I want you to know, do you hear that? Now this is a typical way of responding. He says, I am not a Jew. Because of course, these people believe, just like the Nazis, that they had the ability to define who is a Jew or not. I want to remind people that our hard fought for vocabulary of liberation names the person as being the one who claims what their identity is, not a state and not you.
So that's Jackie Walker. Do you want to explain a little bit about her? Because you know more probably about her than I do.
She
Although
was
I am friends with her on Facebook.
Jeremy Corbyn, and she was in the Labour Party. And all the witch hunt and all the purge of the Jews who support Palestine and support Jeremy Corbyn, it's all pretty much started from her. Since then, a lot of Jews been expelled from the Labour Party for very silly accusations, you know.
It was very silly, and her whole reputation was smeared over nothing, really. If you look at the post, and actually I want people to watch that, The Witch Hunt. I recommend that, highly recommend it, because it really shows just, and there was a lot of Jews interviewed in that were part of the Labour Party, and how they try to smear
all of the
anti-Semitism.
people who are in this movie, they're actually Jewish people. And what is very interesting, you have to watch it, because in the day which this movie was just about to screen, there was the phone call.
I remember that.
Alert. Yeah.
Yep, there was a bomb threat.
International law. By the way, Zionists, they don't really like when we mention international law. They even got the Hasbara manual, which in page 5 is telling them when they mention international law, bring other countries.
And
so
the
if you see,
I want to mention Hasbara means propaganda in Hebrew, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they actually have a manual which teach them how to respond for.
Yes, I've heard of this manual. It was mentioned in one of the documentaries. I think Occupation of the American Mind, that documentary, it's mentioned in there.
Yeah, we're gonna share the link for this documentary as well.
Yes, we'll share that. Let me write that down.
So there we go. The unlawful deportation or transfer grave breaches, which were confirmed in the Protocol 2, and that's Article 147 of the 4th Geneva Convention. I've got number 2. I'm very sorry for the slow opening, but I really want people to understand that it's actually guaranteed by international law, and there's a lot of
settlements are also illegal under international law.
Yeah, a lot of resolution behind it. I'm not going to share everything. We'll share like resources. The Palestinian refugees wishing to return to their homes and live at peace with their neighbors should be permitted to do so at the earliest practicable date, and that compensation should be paid for the property of those choosing not to return and for the loss of the damage of property, which under principle of international law in equity should be made good by the governments or authorities responsible. So basically there's international law behind it. So Zionists got a big problem with international law. Big. It's like they're acting like this is just doesn't include them, and I hope it's going to bite them big time very soon in international criminal court.
And that's the problem too. You know, Jared Kushner, when he showed the, what was it, the deal of the century, he showed the map of what their deal was. What he did is actually showed a map that many Palestinians and Jewish people have been trying to show for a very long time, of that Palestine looks like Swiss cheese. It's like a Swiss cheese. It's not even, you can't form its own state because of the way the settlements are built. And they're basically showing you this now. And we've been smeared as anti-Semitic for sharing that map.
Yeah.
Well, this is a fake map.
Palestine, yeah.
Yeah, this is a fake map and things like that. And the two-state solution has been dead. I have a video out there that I put together. I'll just mention it real quick. Basically, there's a settler leader, Danielle Louise. She worked with Ariel Sharon, who was then the Minister of Agriculture in the 70s. And she says in this documentary, I have the source online on my YouTube channel. Basically, she's saying that during the 70s, her and Ariel Sharon they were going to make sure that settlements were built in a way in which they would never have an ability to build a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria. So this is back in the 70s. So if people are talking about the Oslo Accords and that agreement, then that agreement was never a just agreement. It was never in good favor, because there was already a plan. And maybe there were some people in the Israeli government who wanted a two-state solution. But at the same time, the people who are in power now are those same people like the Ariel Sharon, like Benjamin Netanyahu.
Nothing changed. Like Gideon Levy said in 2019 when we met in Palestine Expo, that two-state solution was never born. He was the one who supported because he believed in it, but now he openly...
I've seen that interview. Yeah, and he's the one who's in charge of like the Haaretz paper, and he's Jewish. He's Israeli Jewish, living in Israel, I believe. Is he living in Israel?
Yeah, he's living in Israel. He's the most hated person in Israel, apparently.
Because he tells the truth. They don't like the truth.
Yeah, and another source which I really recommend is the Palestine Papers. Mm-hmm. You can Google it. I'm not going to quote this because our talk is very long already, but you can check this out. Is literally the minutes from so-called the peace talks, peace process between the Israel and the Palestine with America as a mediator. So please check it out, because they've been submitted to the WikiLeaks. They've been leaked to the WikiLeaks and Al Jazeera, and they are like real documents. And there's a lot of shocking things there. Like, for example, Tzipi Livni telling everyone that we should forget about international law, even though she's a lawyer. So how are you going to have a peace talk based on what exactly if we drop international law? So it's a lot of very interesting nuggets there, and it shows that Israel never been interested in two-state solution, but it also shows the bad side of the Palestinian Authority and how far they were willing.
That's something I want to bring up too, is that Palestinians are not pro-Palestinian Authority. If you talk to the Palestinians, they're actually very upset with their own government as well, because they feel as if their government is in bed with Israel.
Yeah, and that's Palestinian Authority, and a lot of Gazans are also fed up with Hamas.
Exactly. Yeah. They say that Hamas is working for Israel because they serve their agenda. Because when you really think about it, when Hamas is doing these rocket attacks, who is that serving? That's serving Israel's interests, because in the media, you hear about Hamas rockets. And so you think that this is a violent society, that Gazans are violent, and they're not. Mostly unarmed people behind a fence.
Yeah. illegal fence, locked in the ghetto. Yeah.
Exactly. And so,
So
this is what the media has done.
Palestinians questions their government. You questioned, your government.
I do. I question the American government. I'm not scared.
I question Polish government all the time. I'm the biggest critic of my own government. But if God forbid you question Israeli government, then the hell gate just opens. So I want people to actually notice that you are we are free to criticize everything, every government in this earth except the Israel. And why is that? Why is that? Why are we giving them immunity? Why even Israelis cannot criticize their own government without being prosecuted? Why? I think the people should be more strong and don't ever be afraid to ask the questions. Don't ever be afraid to question the authority. Please check everything, because we are living in very interesting times where, the journalist is not the journalists anymore. They're doing the PR for
the top people, for the government.
For the top people. And it's your duty to question things, how many things you didn't know and you find out here, how many other
Why
things.
is that? Why is that? Why didn't you know? Why isn't the media talking about the things that we are talking about?
Yeah.
And I'm a journalism major. And so I know that, what we're taught is the media is like supposed to question the authority. You're supposed to not only question, but you're supposed to hold them accountable. So you're supposed to be the voice for the marginalized, for the people who need their voices heard. And you're supposed to be questioning the powers that be, not being in bed with the powers that be and basically crapping all over the marginalized people. Because that's what we see now. We don't hear from the people. Nobody goes to the people. We have people talking about people, commentators, and all these people who claim to be experts in their area that they're speaking about, but we never go to the people to see what is the problem. Why are you suffering? What is the problem with this conflict?
Yeah.
For instance.
If you guys check the Abby Martin refused to sign Pledge for Israel. It will be very interesting. She's a journalist, and she was offered to sign the pledge. Basically,
she needed it in order to speak, I think, and to show her documentary, and she was not going to sign it.
Yeah.
In America, sign the pledge. They also made like some sort of hurricane survivors down in Texas sign in one of the cities, sign a pledge that they would not boycott Israel. I mean, this is the stuff that's going on in our own government in America.
Yeah. Why is that? Why they're not being asked to sign the pledge? You're not going to say anything bad about
America,
China, New Zealand,
our own country.
Like, why? Why this special treatment?
Because they're afraid of the criticism, because if the BDS movement and if our voices are heard, the truth is going to come out and people's perception is going to change.
And unity is our big power.
Yes, it is.
Now Black Lives Matter endorsed BDS, and they've been smeared as anti-Semite, as we expected. But a lot of Jews support BDS. Even in America, 400 Jewish organizations signed a letter supporting BDS, Black Lives Matter. So unity is our big strength. So don't anyone tell you the hate, and please, like, if you see anti-Semitism, like the real one, like a real one, because we can see it, please react, because it's put us Jewish people in the danger. Not every Jew is Zionist. There's majority of Zionists who are Zionist Christians now. I firmly believe it, more than even Zionist Jews.
Yes.
So please don't assume every Jew is a Zionist. And don't assume every Jew in Israel is Zionist, because they're not. There's a lot of massive anti-Zionist movement. Even in BDS Tel Aviv, they've got the big group there. So there's a lot of Jewish organization, who is working very hard to help us crack this apart from within. So don't give them like very bad time, and don't assume, oh my God, you here to kill people, blah, 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 blah. Just, and react when somebody is saying all those Jews or something. React, tell them, because it gives bad name to all the movement, and we have to look at each other, So we are all safe here.
Unity is important. And I think I wanted to mention too with the media that the Israel lobby that was released by Al Jazeera, the one in the UK and America, was heavily censored. And so you have to understand why that was heavily censored. It's censored for a reason, and you can watch it online. I'm not sure, maybe I can add the links or something, but they're like in different parts. But it's important to see how they're playing in our politics today and silencing dissent when it comes to this issue of Palestine.
Yeah, and there is the lobby. There's no question asked. There is the Zionist lobby, and
oh yeah, there's politicians from back in the day who mentioned signing a pledge to Israel. Cynthia McKinney was one of them, and she questioned 9/11. She questioned a lot of things, and she got smeared as an anti-Semite. And the AIPAC here, what they did is they found somebody to run against her, and they financed her opponent's campaign. And it's basically based on money. Back then it was based on money until the grassroots movement now that just kicked off. So now people are actually getting elected who maybe aren't having all the money, but they have more support behind them. And that's great, you know, but at her time, it wasn't like that. And so she ended up, you know, being unseated. And there's a lot of politicians in the past who spoke against the Israel lobby and made it very clear of what they were doing in our politics.
Yeah, so guys, head open, eyes open, question the lobby, but you know, don't question the human suffering. Like, I believe that well-documented atrocities where people died, they are not there to question. And I mean, don't question Holocaust, don't question Nakba if you are Zionist, because that's racist too. Don't question Armenian genocide, don't question Bosnian genocide. Have respect for the people who died. There are things which we don't question. The rest, feel free, like seriously. This is what I believe.
Yeah. And then we can probably end this here with your scripture. I know we said wanted to end it with scripture.
Yes, so I want to remind people what the Jewish values really are, because it's not supporting Israel. That's not the Jewish values. We've been doing very well before the establishment of the Israel. So of course there's some strong foundation of the Jewish values. It's not, genocide is not Jewish value. Ethnic cleansing, not Jewish value. Racism, not Jewish value. Shooting people in the head, not Jewish value. Settler colonialism, not Jewish values. Imperialism, not Jewish value. What is the Jewish values? Well, one of them is pikuach nefesh, which is mean that the human life comes first. Basically, is the religious law which says, like, whatever you do, whatever the Torah or the Holy Script tell you to do, if you see the human suffering, his life and his well-being comes first. So drop all the religious thing, focus on the human life, because human life is a sacred, it comes first. Another of Jewish values is tzedek tzedek tirdof, which is mean justice, justice you shall pursue. And another one very important is tikkun ulam, which is mean that our Jewish duty is to try to repair the world. So that's the three Jewish principles we're trying to live by, you know, and please take this to the consideration. If you are Jewish and watching this, look deep inside and ask yourself, is Israel really represents those values? Do you really want to live your life defending Israel, or do you want to, you know, go back and see what is real inside? Because I know what my Jewish values are, and that's not apartheid Israel. Nope.
Thank you for sharing that. And I was going to share scripture because I feel like evangelical Christians have things backwards, kind of like the Zionists. You feel that way about Zionists. I feel that way about the evangelical Christians here in America.
Hijacked religious.
Yeah, they hijacked religion, I feel like. They have more in common, I think, with radical, like ISIS, Al-Qaeda groups than they do with us. I'm just going to be honest. Because this ideology of the end of times and trying to bring forth that end of times prophecy, it's nothing but death and destruction. And you're supporting that death and destruction for what? What outcome? It's not good. This is not what is taught in the Bible. And so that's what ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all these groups are doing. They're killing. So your ideology is basically supporting these wars, supporting this ideology for this end of times prophecy where, you know, it's going to bring forth the second coming of Jesus and people will be killed off or whatever you may believe. I don't believe that way. I don't believe that's something that you're supposed to, even if you believe in that prophecy, it's not something that you actively work to make happen, because then you're actively working with evil. And here is the scripture I'm going to use to show you that this is wrong, because Jesus said that his people are the light of the world. And here's the scripture I'm going to read. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things, the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not be partakers with them. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the world. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness, righteousness, and truth, finding out what is acceptable to the Lord, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of those things which are done by them in secret, but all things that are exposed are made manifest by light. For whatever makes manifest is light. Therefore, he says, awake you who sleep, arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light.
Yeah.
And this is the complete opposite of their belief system, of these evangelicals and their belief system and what they are following today. It says, do not follow those who are not following the path of the light. It says, do not work with the unfruitful works of darkness. It says, do not follow the sons of disobedience. It says, be the light, be the truth.
Yeah.
And that's not what they're walking in. And so I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, and there is absolutely no.
And that's the share between the Jewish values and the Christian values. You know, when people say Judeo-Christian values, this is Judeo-Christian values, not this end of times prophecy that brings on endless destruction around the world and promotes a racist ideology.
Yeah.
I want to make that very clear, because it really bothers me that people have hijacked religion and using it for just evil throughout the world.
Thank you so much, guys, for
Thank
watching.
you.
We are absolutely thrilled to have this cooperation together for
Yes.
even more to come. If you have any questions, like, just drop us in the comment section below. We are more than happy to answer them, and I hope you learned something from it. And let us learn from you too in your comments below, so we can check them and interact with you.
I can't wait to see what people have to say about this. It was a very in-depth conversation. Thank you, Jola. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome, honey.
Love you.